300 pounds of dead weight. That is what a caregiver lifts when a patient cannot stand. And most of them lift it with their back, 4 to 8 times a day, until the day their back gives out and there are suddenly 2 people in the house who cannot move. That is the moment a family starts looking at patient lifts, and it almost always starts in the wrong place. People search online, see a hydraulic lift for $300 next to a powered lift for $2,000, and either buy the cheap one because it looks like the same machine, or assume the whole category is hospital equipment that requires a nurse. Both reactions are wrong, and both reactions are expensive, because the wrong lift injures a second person in the house, and the no-lift decision injures the first one. The caregiver who lifts manually today is the patient who needs lifting next year, and the lift that was too expensive in June is cheaper than 1 week of home care after a back injury in September. Both reactions are wrong. A patient lift is not a hoist for furniture. It is the machine that suspends a human being over the gap between a bed and a chair, and if the frame flexes, the pump bleeds down, or the sling rips, the person inside it hits the floor from 3 feet in the air. Here is what nobody says out loud about patient lifts. The 2 components that determine whether a lift works or drops someone are the pump and the sling attachment. The pump is either a hydraulic cylinder you crank by hand or an electric actuator driven by a battery, and the difference is not convenience. A hydraulic pump can bleed down slowly under load when the seals age, which means the person hanging in the sling sinks a few inches every minute, and the caregiver does not notice until the transfer is half finished. An electric actuator with a worm gear drive is mechanically locked at every position, and it cannot descend unless the down button is pressed. The sling attachment is the hook mechanism that connects the fabric to the boom. On a quality lift, the attachment is a rotating spreader bar with positive locking hooks. On a cheap lift, it is an open hook that a webbing loop can slide off during a rotation. Neither component is visible in a product photo. Both are the entire product. The problem is that the patient lift market splits into equipment built for hospitals and equipment built for listings, and the family buyer cannot tell them apart in a photograph. A hospital lift and a listing lift both have a mast, a boom, a base, and a hook. One has been cycled 20 times a day for 5 years on a nursing home floor. The other has been cycled 20 times on a testing bench before the container shipped. The difference lives in the welds, the seals, and the casters, none of which appear in the product photo. Here are 5 patient lift brands everyone ignores, but they are absolutely the best, and then the 3 mistakes every family makes. Number 5. Drive Medical. Drive is the largest home medical equipment manufacturer. The frame is powder-coated steel with a weight capacity of 450 pounds, which is 100 pounds more than most lifts at the price, and the base legs spread with a foot-operated lever so the caregiver can wheel the base under a bed or a recliner without bending. The pump is a hydraulic cylinder with a 2-year seal warranty, and the crank handle is offset so the pumping motion uses the arms, not the back. That handle geometry is not a detail. A caregiver pumping a lift 20 times a day with a straight handle is a caregiver using their lower back as the pivot, and the offset handle is the $2 of engineering that moves the load from the spine to the shoulders. Drive also includes a shifter handle on the base that moves the legs from wide to narrow without bending, which matters on the 10th transfer of the week, when the back that survived the first 9 is looking for a reason to fail. The tell is the base. A lift base that widens with a foot pedal is a lift that fits under furniture, and a lift that fits under furniture is a lift that gets used. The lift that does not fit under the bed is the lift that gets returned. Number 4. Invacare. Invacare is the American manufacturer that has been building medical equipment since 1885, and its 9805P hydraulic lift is the chair that defined the home lift category. The bent mast design moves the boom pivot point forward, which gives the caregiver more clearance over the bed and reduces the reach needed to position the patient, and the closed base is 22 inches wide, which fits through a residential doorway. The frame weighs 68 pounds and the weight capacity is 450 pounds. The tell is the mast geometry. A bent mast is more expensive to build than a straight one, and Invacare builds it anyway, because the bent mast is the difference between a transfer that works in a bedroom and a lift that cannot reach the middle of a standard bed. Invacare also rates this lift to 450 pounds on a frame light enough for one person to push across carpet, which is the engineering trade that matters in a home. Hospital lifts are built for facility floors and facility doorways. The 9805P is built for a house, and it is the lift that home care agencies keep in their rental fleets for exactly that reason. Number 3. Proactive Medical. Proactive is the brand that builds the lifts nursing homes order in bulk, and the reason facilities buy them is the pump cycle count. A proactive hydraulic lift is rated for thousands of pump cycles because a facility lift runs 20 transfers a day, every day, for years. The frame is steel with a 600-pound capacity on the heavy-duty model, and the caster design uses sealed bearings that roll over carpet instead of digging into it. The tell is the caster. A lift that rolls is a lift that gets used, and a lift that digs into carpet pile is a lift that gets dragged, and a dragged lift is a tipped lift. Proactive engineers the casters for the floor it will actually roll on, which is carpet, because that is what homes have. The base legs also lock in the spread position with a positive detent, not a friction catch, because a base that collapses inward during a transfer is a base that drops the boom, and the boom is the arm that carries the patient. A locking base is the component that separates a lift that works from a lift that works until the one time it does not. Number 2, Bestcare. Bestcare is the specialist that builds the lightest, fully functional lifts on the market, and its Wonderlift series is the answer for the family that has no storage space. The frame is aluminum, the lift weighs under 60 pounds, and it still carries a 350-pound patient. The pump is electric with a battery that holds charge for weeks between uses, and the actuator is a worm gear drive that locks mechanically at every height. The tell is the weight. An aluminum lift that a caregiver can carry to a car is a lift that travels, and a lift that travels is a lift that goes to the hotel, the family Christmas, and the second home. A steel lift stays in one room and does one job. An aluminum lift does the job everywhere. Bestcare also includes a quick-release boom that detaches from the mast with a single pin, which means the lift breaks into 2 pieces for a car trunk without tools. A lift that needs a van to transport is a lift that does not travel, and a lift that does not travel is a lift that stays behind when the family moves the patient to a new room. Number 1, Hoyer. Hoyer is the original. The company invented the patient lift. The name is on every sling specification chart in the industry, and the Hoyer Advance is the lift that every other lift is measured against. The Advance is a powered lift with a 440-pound capacity, a folding frame that packs into a car trunk, and a hand control on a coiled cord that works one-handed. The actuator is a sealed unit rated for years of daily transfers, and the sling bar is a rotating spreader with positive locking points that cannot release under load. The tell is the name. Physical therapists say bring the Hoyer the way people say pass the Kleenex, because the brand that invented the category is still the reference point a century later. When a device carries a person over a gap, the company that has been building that device for 100 years is the company that has seen every failure mode, and the current product has every one of those failures engineered out. The Advance also includes a built-in scale that weighs the patient during the lift, which is a feature that no home scale can replicate, because a patient who cannot stand cannot be weighed on a bathroom scale, and a patient who cannot be weighed cannot be dosed correctly. The scale is the feature that turns a lift into a medical device, and Hoyer is the only brand that includes it. Those are the 5 worth your money. Now the 3 mistakes every family makes, because a patient lift is judged by its attachment points far more than its price tag. First, buying the cheapest lift with a universal sling included. The $300 lift that ships with a free universal sling is built around a frame with an open hook attachment and a sling that fits nobody exactly. A universal sling is a compromise shaped like a hammock, and a person in a hammock sling slides toward the lowest point during every lift, which rotates them and loads the open hook sideways. Here is what you are actually buying: a frame that flexes, a pump that bleeds, and a sling that turns every transfer into a physics problem. The sling is not an accessory, it is the component that touches the patient, and it must be sized to the patient, not included free with the frame. A universal sling on a 300-pound patient is a hammock that rotates the person sideways during the lift, loading the open hook at an angle it was never designed to carry. The correct sling is a divided leg sling, a toileting sling, or a hygienic sling, and each one fits a specific transfer and a specific patient. The lift that ships with a free sling is the lift that ships with the wrong sling, and the wrong sling is the component that drops the person who was supposed to be lifted. Second, buying the powered lift when the hydraulic is the right machine. Families assume electric means better, and for a lift used twice a day by a single caregiver, it usually is. But here is the trap. A powered lift is a battery, a charger, a control board, and an actuator, and any one of them failing puts the lift out of service until a part arrives. A hydraulic lift is a cylinder and a pump handle, and the failure mode is a slow seal wear that announces itself weeks in advance. The lift that works during a power outage, that works after 3 years in a closet, that works when nothing else in the house works, is the one with no electronics in it. For the second lift, the backup lift, the one that must work on the worst day, hydraulic is not the budget option. It is the reliability option. Third, the one everyone writes off. The transfer board. Yes, the $6 plastic plank that everyone dismisses as too simple to be a real solution. Here is what people miss. A transfer board does not lift, does not suspend, and does not fail. It bridges. For a patient with enough upper body strength to slide, and enough cognition to cooperate, a transfer board moves a person from bed to chair in 10 seconds, with 0 suspended weight and 0 mechanical failure points. Therapists still teach board transfers in every rehab unit in the country, because the device with no moving parts is the device that never breaks, never bleeds down, and never drops anyone. It cannot do everything a lift does. It does the one transfer it does perfectly, forever, for $6. The tell is that every hospital discharge kit still includes one, because the oldest tool in the room is the one that never fails. Judge the attachment, not the upholstery. Buy the brand that sizes the sling to the patient and locks the spreader bar, and when a caregiver suspends a person they love over the gap between a bed and a chair, never buy the lift that spent more on the listing than on the hook that carries 300 pounds of a human being. The lift that costs $300 less and drops someone once has cost you everything. The lift that costs $300 more and never fails has paid for itself the first time the person was set down safely instead of on the floor.